Hey Harmony House, welcome to another chapter book story time. I hope you're sitting or laying down somewhere nice and cozy and comfy with a blanket or something to keep you relaxed so you can listen to the story. Today we are on chapter 6 of the second Magic Misfits book. So in yesterday's chapter we met a new character named Sandra Santos, I believe. And she walked into the magic shop. She's not a kid, she's a grown woman. And she wanted to see Mr. Dante Vernon. And we found out that they used to be, when they were kids, they were best friends. Sandra Santos was a part of their club, the Emerald Ring, where they practiced their magic. So she knew Mr. Dante Vernon, she knew Carter's dad, she knew BB Bozzo, who back then went by Bobby, because they were all a part of this magic club when they were kids. And that's pretty much all we know about her so far. Yesterday we were making predictions about whether or not we thought she was going to be a kind, helpful character or maybe not so kind. I don't know, let's find out. So here's chapter 6. While Mr. Vernon prepared refreshments in the apartment, Sandra sat with the Magic Misfits at the small folding table in the back of the shop. And then Layla continued, telling the story of the diamond heist at the Grand Oak Resort. One of Bozzo's goons clobbered my dad over the head. My friends and I knew we had to save him. Sandra listened in awe to the rest of the tale, as if she couldn't believe that two of her childhood friends would become embroiled in such a bitter clash. Finally, she admitted, Bobby was always a little difficult. Difficult is an interesting way to describe him, said Ridley. Totally bonkers is another way, Carter answered. Theo shook his head in disgust. Criminal is the best way. He was more crooked than corkscrew pasta, said Ollie. You mean fusilli? Let me do that again. He was more crooked than corkscrew pasta, said Ollie. You mean fusilli, Izzy said. Gazoon-tight, Ollie replied. Speaking of, how does a diamond thief celebrate the 4th of July? With sparklers, Izzy answered with a silly yuck-yuck laugh. Mr. Vernon descended the stairs. He was holding a tray with a pitcher of iced tea, several glasses, and a plate of those shortbread cookies Carter loved to hoard. Gossiping about me again, kids? Carter laughed. Not you. We were talking about Bozzo. In that case, I'd better step up my game. It's always a trick to be on the tips of everyone's tongues. Mr. Vernon set the tray on the table, adding, Everyone help yourselves. Sandra poured the tea. Thank you, Dante. You always were the epitome of politeness. So, Sandra, Mr. Vernon went on, sitting on the arm of the chair where Layla was perched. What brings you back to Mineral Wells after all these years? Some sad news, actually, said Sandra, glancing at the kids as if maybe they couldn't handle it. She decided quickly that they could. My mother passed away. I remember hearing that some time ago. Yes, it's been several years, Sandra went on. I had a hard time thinking about returning. Too many ghosts from the past. But Mother left me the old house. You should see the state of it. A total wreck. Boxes everywhere. Layers of dust inches thick. And quite a few unwanted residents. Spiders and flies and mice and snakes. So much work to do. Still, the old house holds a few dear memories, especially those of an old friend who happens to live in the same town. I do apologize. Oh, don't jump on the laptop. There you go. Where was I? I do apologize for taking so long to visit, but my career has kept me traveling constantly, and I've only recently managed to take the time to settle things here. Why do you travel so much? Asked Carter, between slurps of iced tea. Your job, I mean. What do you do? Well, it just so happens that I'm a stage psychic. I perform in front of huge audiences all around the country. The Misfits went silent, holding their breath. They stared at Sandra as if she'd just told them that she was the first woman to walk on the moon. Maybe you've heard of me? I go by the name Madame Esmeralda. The Madame Esmeralda? Theo asked. I thought you looked familiar. Your posters are in some of the theaters where my father conducts his symphony. I've never met a famous person before, said Carter. Famous? Sandra laughed. I suppose I am, though only a little bit. It's a fun job. I get to meet lots of people and see the best sights. I always thought psychic people were a myth, said Ridley, her brows furrowed. Are you really psychic, or do you just pretend to be? Ridley? Layla whispered through her teeth. That's not nice. It's okay, Layla, said Sandra. It's a question that everyone wonders. At least your friend is honest enough to ask. But yes, I read vibrational energies of people, places, and things, and I perceive information about past, present, or even future events. But how? Ridley pressed. Do you use tarot cards, numerology, astrology, palmistry? The other Misfits looked at Ridley as if she was spouting nonsense. She scowled. What? When I was researching John Neville Maskelyne, I spent time looking at some of Mr. Vernon's books about mind reading here at the shop. There are so many types of psychics. Precognitors who claim to predict the future. Telepaths will read your mind. Telekinesists move matter with their brains. All quite different. Blah, blah. I keep stumbling over my words today. Whew. All right, here we go. What? When I was researching John Neville Maskelyne, I spent time looking at some of Mr. Vernon's books about mind reading here at the shop. There are so many types of psychics. Precognitors who claim to predict the future. Telepaths will read your mind. Telekinesists move matter with their brains. All quite different, though most of them are fraudulent. Sandra didn't bat an eye. Instead, she sipped her tea politely. So, to explain this a little bit, Sandra has told us that she's a psychic. So a psychic is someone who can basically maybe see into the future, maybe read your mind or read how you're feeling, and tell you something about your past or your present or your future. And what Ridley is saying is that most psychics are fraudulent. That means they're fake. Basically, they're using tricks to put on a show, like the tricks that maybe Carter does, where it's not real magic, but he's using these tricks to make it look like magic, so that to make people happy, to make people excited. And so she's questioning Sandra. She's saying, "So are you a fake psychic, or can you really read people's minds? What do you think?" I don't know. Sandra didn't bat an eye. Instead, she sipped her tea politely. How do you identify yourself? Ridley asked. I'm what some would call a clairvoyant, said Sandra. What's that? Asked Carter. It means that I receive little messages about people, and then I let those people know what they need to know. Layla flinched. Little messages? From who? Most clairvoyants would say the messages come directly from a spirit guide, said Sandra. The spirit guide whispers secrets in our ears, and we share that information with people who need help. So you talk to ghosts? Ridley insisted. Are the ghostly messages real? Sandra pursed her lips mysteriously. Mr. Vernon grabbed the handkerchief from the breast pocket of his jacket and used it to dab the corners of his mouth. Then he went to shove the kerchief back into his pocket, but another one had already popped up to take its place. Mr. Vernon pulled that one from the pocket too, and another kerchief appeared. He yanked 5 more kerchiefs from his jacket, dropping them all into his lap with a baffled look. The kids laughed. The proof is in the pudding, Mr. Vernon said finally. What's that mean? Ridley asked. If it looks like pudding and tastes like pudding, it's likely to be pudding. Mr. Vernon didn't seem sure. That is not what it means, Theo said. The adage means you have to try out a new thing for yourself to know whether you like it or not. That's not how I understood it, Carter said. I thought it meant you could only declare something a success after it has been tried out. I thought it meant, trust me, the pudding is good, Layla said. Oh, all pudding is good, said Ollie, especially chocolate and butterscotch. Yum! But only after Mom removes the gross leathery skin that forms on top, added Izzy, or else Ollie won't touch it. Mr. Vernon laughed. I guess old sayings are just like magic. So they're trying to discuss the phrase, the proof is in the pudding, and they're saying, well, what does that actually mean? Have you ever heard that phrase? Has anyone ever said to you that, or no, I guess it's, if it looks like, no wait, what is it? Yeah, the proof is in the pudding, yeah. So have you ever heard that phrase? They're talking about what does that mean exactly? I guess old sayings are just like magic. It's all in the interpretations. People take what they want from it. He scooped up the extra kerchiefs from his lap and bunched them into one fist. With his other hand, he tugged the edge of one until it flopped loosely between his fingers. Then, with a dramatic flourish, he whipped a single kerchief from his fist and held it up. All the other kerchiefs were gone. The Misfits gasped and then chuckled. Psychics are like magicians, Ridley. It often doesn't matter whether or not the magician is pretending. What matters is what the audience believes. I like that. That's a good way to put it. I really like how Mr. Vernon said that, because we talk a lot in this book about how, like, are they doing real magic or are they doing these tricks to make people happy? Or in Uncle Sly's case, to make people sad. But I like how he puts it. He said, it often doesn't matter whether or not the magician or the psychic is pretending. What matters is what the audience believes. So what do you believe? Ridley turned back to Sandra. So then, to be psychic, you just have to make people believe that you are? Sandra's eyes twinkled. Layla recognized a glimmer of her dad's own mischief. No wonder they'd been close friends once upon a time. Something like that, Sandra answered. With a wry grin, she added, How do you know I'm not actually psychic, Dante? Are you? He asked. She lowered her voice to a spooky cosmic tone and said, I've learned much since we were young. She raised her hands and wiggled her fingers and moaned like a ghost. Ooh! The others chuckled. Where are you staying while in Mineral Wells? Layla asked. Not in that old run-down house. Well, I don't have another option, honey. Not unless Dante is offering. She flashed him a hopeful glance. Mr. Vernon flushed. I wish we could, I really do. Layla couldn't keep her mouth shut. Dad! It was unlike him to deny someone help, especially an old friend. Ignoring her outburst, Mr. Vernon went on. But we no longer have a guest room, and I couldn't possibly recommend that you bunk on our lumpy couch upstairs. You'd have absolutely no privacy. He shook his head. Tell you what, Sandra, I'll call my partner up at the Grand Oak Resort and see if he can't arrange for a most extravagant room, just until you've made your mother's place habitable. More habitable. Sandra couldn't hide her disappointment. I'd be most appreciative. Brilliant, said Mr. Vernon, standing and heading over to the phone. We'll set you up at the resort. Then this evening you'll come back and have dinner with all of us. Us too? Asked Theo. I'm intrigued to hear more about Sandra's skills, said Ridley, raising an eyebrow. Alas, I shan't make it, Ollie said dramatically. Yeah, we can't stay, Izzy whined. It's a Golden family dinner night. Ridley pressed the issue. But the rest of us? Okay, Mr. Vernon chuckled. Ollie and Izzy, you'll be sorely missed, but I'll be sure to ask the other Mr. Vernon to bring home extra food for everyone else. It'll be a welcome home party for Sandra. I couldn't ask for anything more, Sandra said. My goodness, how I've missed you, Dante. Thank you so much. Listening closely, Layla could sense a kind of defeat in Sandra's voice. For a moment, Layla wondered if she had psychic powers of her own. And that is the end of our chapter. Interesting. So we learned a little bit more about Sandra and why she's in town. She's been given her childhood home. Like, she doesn't live in Mineral Wells anymore. She was moving around the country, around the world, working as a psychic. But now she's come back to Mineral Wells, to her childhood home that's been kind of like run down. No one's been living in it for a while. And so she wants to fix it up. And while she's here, she thought she'd go meet up with her old friend, Dante Vernon. And so we learned that why she's in town. We learned what she does. She's a psychic. But there's one other mystery that Layla is she's got a feeling. Layla has a feeling that something else is going on. Sandra wanted to stay at the house with Dante Vernon and his family while she's fixing up her childhood home. And even though Mr. Vernon was able to set her up with a nice hotel room at the Grand Oak Resort, Layla's still picking up on some disappointment. And so she's wondering, why would Sandra be disappointed that she couldn't stay with Mr. Vernon? Why did she want so badly to be in that house? What's wrong with this nice hotel room that's just down the street? I don't know. So I think Layla's feeling a little suspicious. What do you think? Do you think that Sandra's just sad because she wants to spend some more time with her old friend? Or do you think that she's disappointed because she has an ulterior motive, or basically some other scheme up her sleeve, some other plan? I don't know. I guess we'll just have to keep reading to find out. So next time, chapter 7. Be there or be square. See you later.